Dreamland for the Game Boy. The one that started it all 2 decades ago. Yes, this is today's subject matter for review, and no, I'm not making any jokes or quips or puns about sucking or blowing. It's been done. There is no joke, quip, or pun that hasn't been done already regarding those actions these past 20 years, so let's not go there.
Is DK always a scam?
Well, it took me long enough. But that doesn't matter. Here we are, some 10 and a half, 11 years later. We're finally going to look at Kirby's Adventure for the NES. Better late than never, I guess. Kirby's Dream Land was the first game in the long-running Kirby series, initially perceived as a beginner's game, and playing it now, you've got the basic groundwork of the Kirby formula and it got the job done, but clearly something was missing. Kirby may have been born on the Game Boy, but Kirby didn't become Kirby until he went on a little adventure, if you will. Hence today's subject matter, Kirby's Adventure, released in 1993 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Plot-wise, it's similar to the first Dreamland game. King Dedede is being a rotten scoundrel again, terrorizing Dreamland with his many minions, and it's up to Kirby to put a stop to his nefarious plans, because that's all there is. Fairly simplistic plot, nothing too deep. Blow through the menus, beat the big bad, the day is saved, right? Right? So Kirby's Adventure, which was the first Kirby game that I ever played way back when, is what I'd like to call the true birth of Kirby. Again, Kirby's Dream Land may have been the first game in the series and established some aspects of the Puff of Puffs, but Kirby's Adventure was the game that introduced Kirby's signature trait, and that is his puffy pink complexion, which made it oh so adorable. Oh, and his ability to suck enemies into his puffy pink puff bowels and steal their powers. To use a Trek analogy, if Kirby's Dream Land was the cage, then Kirby's Adventure was the man-trap. You know, the one with the salt monster. Kirby's the salt monster that sucks the salt out of people. Never mind, nobody's going to get that. Anyway, it's Kirby's Adventure, and it's a much larger game compared to the first Kirby's Dream Land game. 7 somewhat massive worlds broken up into little stages, and in each stage you have to venture to the end of the level dealing with enemies and other hazards. Kirby, as before, can suck up some air to become a floating balloon thing to fly around and such, as well as suck up enemies and spit them back out to kill other enemies and such. Certain enemies, when gobbled, will cause Kirby to flash a bit, and pressing down will not only cause him to swallow said foe, but also acquire whatever power that foe may possess or something equivalent. There are 24 different powers that Kirby can copy, ranging from projectile weapons to melee strikes, and even a couple grapple moves. And on the rare occasion where Kirby manages to gobble up 2 or more foes with flashing powers, well, you may get a completely different power chosen completely at random. Unfortunately, only one power can be held at any one time, so you'll have to ditch your current copied ability if you wish to claim another. Kirby will also lose his copied ability if he takes a hit, though he could get it back by gobbling up the bouncing star before it goes bye-bye, or if he falls into a pit and dies, in which case said ability is lost forever and you'll have to find it elsewhere. Aside from that, Kirby gains 2 other useful abilities, the ability to break into a sprint for greater speed, as well as a nifty slide move, useful for clearing away those pesky star blocks from your path. I am obviously not saying anything that you probably don't already know, because Kirby is a big thing now. He swallowed a car after all. Or the car swallowed him. I don't know, maybe it's a consensual swallowing or something? How would that work? Why even mention this? I don't know. I don't care. Let's move on. For the one solo NES outing, Kirby's Adventure does not skimp. This is not a short romp through Dreamland that'll take you 20 minutes or less to blow through, no pun intended. This is a fairly big enough adventure with a lot of levels and challenges for you to tackle, lots of somewhat unique boss encounters for 1993 at least, and also, again, a sizable arsenal of abilities to aid you in your quest to end this nightmare in Dreamland, no pun intended. Control is pretty tight, it's snappy, responsive, Kirby moves like a dream compared to his Game Boy outings. When you pause the game, you have a brief description of your current ability, which is a helpful piece of business to know. And the levels sometimes are set up in a way that when you get a new power for the first time, the next segment or two would be designed with said power in mind, which is a nice way of teaching the player how these things work in practice. It's an adventure so massive they implemented a save system via battery backup, so that each time you clear a level, your progress is saved, and you have 3 save slots to record to, which is standard with these NES save systems. But in addition to the action bits, there are other bits as well, such as minigames. There's one at the end of each level where you have to slingshot yourself to the clouds above, and the higher you go, the more points you score, and if you manage to reach the highest point, you get a 1-up. There's a crane minigame where you have to try and nab the Kirby dolls for extra lives. There's a fast draw minigame where the fastest draw win and you earn points and a 1-up. There's a Coliseum pitting you against a mini-boss whose powers is yours for the taking if you win. And finally, there's a museum where a stationary foe can be swallowed without much effort, giving you a freebie, so to speak. Don't forget the egg catching game. There's an egg catching game where you catch enough eggs, you get points, you catch all of them, you get a 1-up or something. Nobody cares about the egg catching game. They replace all of these in a remake anyway, so who cares? The trade-off is that in later worlds, these bonus rooms are closed off, and the only way to unveil them is to uncover these switches hidden in various levels of the game. If you clear a level and the door on the main map doesn't change color, there's probably a switch that you need to uncover, which aren't necessary to beat the game, but for the completionists out there, it's a nice way of keeping track. Now I say this adventure is massive, but I never said it was overly difficult. Kirby's Adventure does retain that welcoming novice difficulty that eases newcomers to the genre in, and while there might be a couple trouble spots here and there, it's not going to make you sweat all that much. Hence why, much like Kirby's Dream Land 1, when you beat the game you'll get a boss endurance mode, and when you beat the game with 100% completion, you'll unlock an extra mode which is basically the same game, except now you have 3 hit points instead of the usual 6, and you can't save your progress, so you have to beat this in one shot, and doing so unlocks the sound mode. Of course, these days with the game available on things that feature some sort of save state functionality, that last part is something of a moot point. Kirby's Adventure retains the overall visual look of Kirby's Dream Land, as a lot of the characters, backgrounds, blocks, and other assets were brought over from the Game Boy title and pretty much look the same as before, though there are some slight tweaks if you can spot them that make them look a little cleaner on the NES side. Of course, there's a bunch of new stuff in there too, and that stuff looks good, fits in with the cutesy overall appearance of the game. And also, everything is in color. Except for one stage, which is in black and white, a nod to Kirby's monochrome origins with only a puff of pink to be found around these parts. Runs fairly smoothly for the most part, but this being the NES, there's going to be occasional bouts of slowdown and flicker whenever things get a bit too crowded, shall we say. There's also a pleasant collection of tunes to be found here, with only a couple taken from the first game, along with most of the sound effects and little jingles that game produced, which also got a bit of a touch-up here and sound a bit cleaner, but otherwise sound mostly the same. And of course, again, there's some new sounds here as well. But the music here is quite nice, much more pleasant and happy compared to the Game Boy version, which is kind of, it was okay. It was okay, but the tunes here are better, with only a couple somber tunes towards the end, but you'd expect that because it's more towards the end and, well, whatever. It's all good. Kirby's Adventure would be the sole NES outing for the little guy, and they made that one shot count, pretty much giving Kirby that last piece needed to evolve from cute little vacuum puffball to the fluffy pink murder machine he would become today, as the copy ability was the game-changing game changer to change all games and make Kirby more fun. That wasn't redundant at all. Not to take away from Dreamland 1, that laid the foundation, but Adventure filled the parts that were left to fill, and the end result was a fun little platform game that's fun for the whole family, even though it's only a one-player game. Oh well, it's been re-released a number of times over the years. It's got a remake on the Game Boy Advance in Nightmare and Dreamland, a fine remake by the way. But Kirby's Adventure leaves a lasting impression that would inform the rest of this fine franchise, and is just an enjoyable game as a whole. If you've never played this one, you probably should. It'll change your life. Or at least make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I don't know, it's all I got. Bye.